The phone rang just after dinner. Elena wiped her hands on a towel and picked it up. It was her sister, Lauren. "Elena," Lauren said, her voice tight but polite. "We're all so excited about the reunion this week. It's been too long." Elena smiled softly. "Yeah, it has." There was a pause on the line. Then Lauren's voice changed, quieter, slower. "You can come, Elena. But please don't bring Micah." Silence. Elena didn't answer. She looked across the room at her son, Micah, sitting on the floor with his train set. He was making the soft choo-choo sound he loved. His hands moved carefully, pushing the engine along the wooden tracks. His tongue poked out in focus, his eyes full of wonder. He didn't know. He didn't know someone had just asked him not to exist. Elena's hand tightened around the phone. She didn't yell. She didn't ask why. She didn't give Lauren the satisfaction of hearing her cry. She simply said, "Okay," and hung up. She sat at the kitchen table. The hum of the fridge was the only sound now. Her heart pounded in her chest, heavy with anger, shame, and something even worse, familiarity. This wasn't new. Not really. Elena had been the family's problem since she was 17, when she told them she was pregnant. They had looked at her like she had thrown her future away. After Micah was born and the diagnosis came, cerebral palsy, things only got worse. Her parents stopped offering to help. Lauren smiled in public, but rolled her eyes in private. And Jordan, well, Jordan stayed quiet. That hurt too. But Micah? He was her light. He didn't talk much, but he laughed. He hugged her with his whole body. He loved rain and music and chocolate pudding. He wasn't broken. He was just different. She looked at him now, still playing, humming to himself. A lump formed in her throat. They didn't want him there. They didn't want him seen. Elena stood up slowly, walked over, sat beside him. Micah looked up and grinned. "Mama," he said softly, the way he always did, like it was his favorite word. She kissed his forehead and whispered, "We're going." They want to pretend he doesn't exist. Not this time. Elena's mornings started before the sun came up. She worked at the local grocery store from 6 to noon, then cleaned houses in the afternoon. By the time she got home, her back ached and her feet were sore. But Micah always ran, or shuffled as fast as he could, to the door when she walked in. He'd throw his arms around her waist, and in that moment, all the tiredness melted away. She had no one to help her. No partner, no parents she could call. Just her and Micah, every single day. At 17, when she told her family she was pregnant, everything changed. Her mother cried, not because Elena was scared, but because she was ashamed. Her father didn't speak to her for weeks. Lauren called her reckless, and told her she'd ruined her life. Jordan, only 15 at the time, said nothing at all. Back then, she thought maybe they'd come around. That once they saw the baby, things would be different. But then came the hospital visits. The diagnosis, cerebral palsy. The doctor explained how it would affect Micah's muscles and movement, maybe even his speech. She remembered holding her newborn and crying, not because she was afraid of him, but because she knew her family would blame her. Troy, Micah's father, couldn't handle it. He disappeared before Micah's first birthday. No calls, no money, nothing. Since then, it had been just the two of them. Elena learned how to stretch every dollar, how to fight insurance company, how to stay calm during therapy sessions. She became strong because she had no other choice. Lauren sometimes called to check in, but her voice was always lined with judgment. "You're doing great, considering everything," she'd say. Or, maybe Micah would do better in a program somewhere. Elena knew what she meant. Maybe someone else should take care of him. Jordan was kinder. He sent texts now and then. "You good?" Or "Let me know if you need anything." But he never actually came by. He never saw how hard it was. Now the family reunion was coming up, and it was being held at the house they grew up in. Elena hadn't stepped inside that house in nearly 10 years. The thought of going back filled her with a strange mix of fear and sadness. But Micah was excited. He'd never met most of his cousins. Lately, he'd been practicing a new word with his speech therapist. "Hello." He said it proudly, slowly, smiling wide each time. He even drew little pictures to give them. In his mind, this reunion was something to look forward to. Elena didn't know what to do. She wanted to protect him. She wanted to shield him from cold stares, from whispered comments, from being treated like a problem. But she also wanted him to be seen, to be loved, to be part of the family. One night, after putting Micah to bed, she sat alone on the couch with a cup of tea. Her phone buzzed. It was Jordan. Just a short message. "You coming to the reunion?" She didn't reply. She stared at the ceiling, her thoughts racing. Part of her wanted to run the other way, skip the whole thing. But her therapist once told her, avoidance doesn't protect, it just delays the pain. Micah deserved more than silence. He deserved to be seen, fully and proudly. Elena set her tea down and walked into Micah's room. He was asleep, his drawing pad beside him, crayon still in his hand. She knelt beside his bed, brushed the hair from his face, and whispered, "We'll go. Together." She didn't know how it would turn out, but she knew this time she wouldn't hide. The day of the reunion came with clear skies and a quiet house. Elena woke early and took extra time getting Micah ready. She picked out his little blue button-down shirt, the one he wore to therapy on special days. She brushed his hair gently and helped him put on his sneakers. "You look so handsome," she said, smiling. Micah smiled back. "Hello," he whispered, practicing the word again. Elena's heart ached with pride and worry. The drive to her parents' house felt long, even though it was only 30 minutes. Her hands gripped the steering wheel tightly the whole way. When they pulled up to the house, Elena paused before getting out. The front yard looked the same old swing, same white porch. It should have felt like home, but it didn't. They walked in together. Right away, the room grew quiet. A few people smiled politely, but most just stared. Lauren walked over, arms open. "You made it," she said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. She leaned down to Micah. "Hi there," she added, her voice stiff. Micah waved. "Hello," he said softly. Lauren stood back up quickly and moved on. Their father was sitting on the couch, watching a game on the TV. He glanced at Elena and gave a small nod. He didn't look at Micah. Their mother came out of the kitchen and frowned. "You should have left him with a sitter," she said under her breath. "He already looks tired." Elena didn't respond. She knelt beside Micah and said, "Want a snack?" He nodded and walked carefully toward the snack table. He reached for a cookie, but just as his fingers touched the plate, one of the cousins grabbed it and moved it away. "Mom said those are for later," the girl said, not even looking at him. Micah looked confused. He turned back to Elena. Elena walked over and took a cookie from a different plate, handed it to Micah, and gave the girl a sharp look. She didn't say anything. Not yet. As more people arrived, Elena noticed the same pattern. Smiles for everyone else, distance for her and Micah. Lauren moved through the room like the perfect hostess, acting as if nothing was wrong. But each time her eyes met Elena's, there was something cold behind them. Dinner was served around a large table. Elena helped Micah into his chair, cutting his food into small pieces. He was trying hard to stay calm, but the noise, the smells, the people, it was too much. Halfway through the meal, he suddenly dropped his fork and knocked over his cup of juice. It spilled across the table. The room went silent. Micah flinched, eyes wide. Her mother sighed loudly. "This is why we said not to bring him." Elena froze. Her face turned red, and her hands shook as she slowly stood up. Her voice trembled. "Say that again," she said. Out loud. In front of him. No one moved. Micah looked up at her, unsure, his small hands gripping the edge of the table. "Go ahead," Elena said louder now. "Say it again. Let him hear what you really think." Her mother's mouth opened, but no words came out. Elena's voice cracked, but she didn't back down. "He can hear you. He may not talk like other kids, but he hears everything. So go on. Say it." The silence felt heavy, like a wall between them all. Elena stood tall, her hand resting gently on Micah's shoulder. "This is your family," she said quietly, "whether you like it or not." Elena's hands were still shaking, but she didn't sit down. The silence at the table dragged on. No one moved. No one spoke. Micah looked around nervously, still holding the edge of the table, unsure of what he had done wrong. Elena had held in her pain for years, but something inside her had cracked open. "You know," she said, her voice low but sharp, "it's funny. You all love to talk about forgiveness, about grace, about family. You sit in church every Sunday, nodding your heads to every sermon." She looked at her mother. "But when I got pregnant, you shut the door in my face." Her mother looked down at her plate. "I was 17, scared, alone. And instead of helping me, you acted like I had ruined your life, like I was some stain you needed to scrub away." Her father shifted in his seat, but said nothing. Elena turned toward Lauren. "And you? You stood there with your perfect grades and your clean smile and told me I was irresponsible, that I should have thought things through." Lauren stiffened. Elena's voice rose slightly. "You want to talk about thinking things through, Lauren? Should I remind you about college? That night you called me crying, terrified, because you missed your period? The abortion you never told Mom and Dad about." Gasps echoed around the table. Lauren's face turned pale. "Elena, stop." "No," Elena said. "I'm not saying it to shame you. I'm saying it to show you how easy it is to sit on your high horse when no one knows your story. I didn't judge you. I was there for you, but you never gave me the same grace." Lauren's eyes filled with tears. Elena took a deep breath. Her voice softened, but the pain in it was clear. "I didn't ask for Micah to be born with cerebral palsy, but I wouldn't trade him for anything. And every single time you look at him like he's something to be hidden, it breaks my heart." She looked around the table. "Do you have any idea how hard it's been? I work 2 jobs. I go to sleep worrying and wake up worrying. And all this time, all I ever wanted was for my family to see him the way I do." Jordan finally spoke up. His voice was quiet. "I wanted to say something, for a long time, but I didn't know how. I was scared." Elena looked at him. "Scared of who? Them?" He nodded. "Yeah. I guess. I didn't want to cause trouble. You didn't cause trouble, Jordan, she said. You just stayed quiet while I drowned. He looked down, ashamed. Then their mother finally spoke. Her voice was tight, almost whispering. I didn't know how to love him right. I was ashamed. I didn't want people to think something was wrong with our family. Micah, still sitting beside Elena, started to cry. Elena turned and picked him up, holding him close. It's okay, she whispered into his ear. I've got you. She looked around once more, her eyes burning. We're leaving. She started toward the door, Micah in her arms. Her father stood up and stepped in front of her. Elena, he said sternly, don't make a scene. She stopped. A quiet anger lit up her face. Her voice was calm, but full of fire. No, she said. You all made this scene. I'm just turning on the lights. And with that, she walked around him and headed for the door. Elena reached the door and paused. Her hand was on the handle. Micah's small body was warm against her chest, his head resting on her shoulder. The room behind her was still. No one spoke. Then slowly she turned around. She looked at each of them, her father, her mother, Lauren, Jordan. Her voice was calm now, tired but clear. You know what? I'm not going to leave, she said. Not this time. She walked back to the table and gently sat down with Micah still in her lap. Everyone watched in silence. You all see him and think he's a problem, she began. But let me tell you what you don't know. Her eyes filled with tears, but she didn't look away. When I gave birth to Micah, I almost died. The delivery was hard. His heart rate dropped. Mine did too. For a moment, the doctor told me they didn't know if either of us would make it. I remember lying there, begging God to let him live, even if I didn't. She looked down at her son and kissed his head. He survived. And every day after that has been a fight. He's had surgeries, therapies, sleepless nights. He didn't walk until he was 5. He still can't run. But he tries. He tries so hard. And through all of it, I was alone. The room stayed quiet. I would hold him while he cried in pain. I would sing to him until he fell asleep. And not once did I wish he was different. Because he's mine. He's my heart. Just then, Micah slid off her lap. Slowly, he walked over to where Lauren's daughter was sitting at the kids' table. In his small, careful hand was a crumpled drawing, a red flower with a big yellow sun above it. He held it out to her. The girl looked at him, then at the drawing. She took it gently and smiled. Thank you, she said. Something shifted in the air. Jordan stood up. His eyes were red. He walked over to Micah, knelt down, and hugged him. I'm sorry I wasn't there, he said, holding him tight. I should have been. Micah smiled and hugged him back. Lauren stood too, wiping her eyes. She walked toward Elena slowly. You were braver than me, she whispered. I judged you because I was scared. I'm so sorry. Elena nodded, tears falling freely now. She looked across the room at her mother, who hadn't moved. For a long moment, no one said anything. Then slowly her mother stood. She walked over to Micah and knelt beside him. Her hands were shaking. I'm sorry, she said softly. I didn't know how to love him right. I didn't understand. But I want to try if you'll let me. Micah looked at her and gave a small smile. Elena watched, her heart breaking open. He's not a burden, she said quietly. He's the reason I survived. Someone took out their phone. Let's get a photo, Jordan said. They all gathered in the living room. Elena sat in the center, Micah in her lap. Her mother sat beside them, holding Micah's hand. Lauren and her daughter stood to one side. Jordan stood on the other. The camera clicked. For the first time, Micah was in the middle, and no one tried to move him. Things felt different after the reunion. Back home, Micah seemed lighter. He smiled more. He laughed more. He sat by the window and drew picture after picture. Flowers, suns, houses with smiling stick figures. One morning, he drew the whole family sitting together on the couch. In the middle, he had drawn himself, holding hands with everyone. Elena looked at the drawing for a long time. She started writing again. At night, after Micah fell asleep, she opened her laptop and wrote about their life. About the hard days, the quiet victories, the lessons she had learned from being his mom. She started a blog, just a small one. She called it Micah's Light. Slowly, readers found her. Other parents, teachers, even strangers who just wanted to understand. The messages she got were full of kindness. For the first time, Elena felt heard. One Saturday afternoon, Jordan stopped by with a pizza. Game night, he said with a smile. Micah ran to him and gave him a big hug. Jordan brought board games, and they played for hours. It became a weekly thing, just the three of them, laughing, eating, being together. No pressure, no judgment. Lauren called a few days later. I meant what I said, she told Elena. I want to do better. She had joined a support group for parents and relatives of children with disabilities. She said she wanted her daughter to grow up kind and accepting, and she knew that started with her. Their mother called too. Not every day, not always knowing what to say, but she tried. She asked if she could come visit. She even brought a small toy for Micah, soft and quiet, made for sensory comfort. Micah hugged her without hesitation. Elena watched it all slowly unfold. It wasn't perfect, but it was more than she ever expected. One evening, her phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. "Hey, it's Troy. I've been thinking about you and Micah. Can we talk?" Elena stared at the screen for a moment. Then she deleted the message without replying. Later that night, after Micah brushed his teeth and put on his pajamas, Elena tucked him in. He yawned and pulled his favorite blanket up to his chin. Elena leaned close, kissed his forehead, and whispered, "You didn't just change them, baby. You changed me.